He was a normal worker minding his own business.
Register up right now.
But one day, Russian mafia did inexplicable to his innocent friend. Their brutality ensued his revenge. And on that day, he completely wiped Russian mafia from face of earth. Welcome back to Paramount Recaps. I don't have many subscribers, but your single comment is a ray of hope to motivate me.
Who the fuck you think you are?
Now, let's jump into it. Our main guy, Robert McCall, is an early riser. He's up and getting ready for his job at this home improvement store called Homemart. Everyone there likes him and respects him. He's one of those people who just gets along with everyone. At lunch, he's sitting with his buddy Ralph, who's munching on a sandwich, and McCall hears a loud crunch. Turns out, Ralphie stuffed chips in his sandwich. McCall, being the good friend he is, reminds Ralphie that he's supposed to be losing weight for his security guard exam. Ralphie just laughs it off. Most nights, McCall heads to this diner with a book. Right now, he's reading The Old Man and the Sea. One of the young girls who works there asks him if the guy in the book has caught his fish yet. McCall says, not yet. She finishes her pie and heads out to grab a cab. Later, some of McCall's co-workers get curious and ask what he did before working at Homemart. He jokes around, telling them he used to be one of the pips from Gladys Knight's band, even doing a little dance to play along. They all laugh it off, thinking he's just messing with. That night, McCall is back at the diner, and guess what? He runs into the same girl again. She notices he's moved on to a new book. Suddenly, a fancy limo pulls up outside, and the girl gets a call. It's her pimp, Slavy, and he's telling her she's got a client, the guy waiting in the limo. She really doesn't want to go because the dude's a total creep, but she doesn't have a choice. Reluctantly, she goes out and gets into the car with this gross, obese man. The next night, McCall finds the girl again, but this time she's got a bruise on her face. Feeling bad, he gives her a donut he grabbed from work. She sits down with him and tells him her name is Terry, though her real name is actually Elena. She gives McCall a CD of her singing, and they head out for a walk. But then Slavy and his driver, Tavy, show up. Slavy storms out of the car and slaps Elena, and McCall looks like he's about to step in until he sees Tavy packing. Slavy hands McCall a business card, basically saying he can call if he wants to get in on the action with other girls. Not long after, McCall returns to the diner and learns that Elena got beaten up pretty badly and is now in the ICU. He goes to visit her, and another girl, Mandy, is by Elena's side crying. Mandy gets up to grab a coffee, but she's so shaken that she overfills the cup. McCall comforts her, and they ride the elevator together. She explains that Slavy beat up Elena because she hit him back. Apparently, Slavy even threw battery acid at another girl to make an example out of her. The guy's a real psycho, and he's threatened more girls in the past. McCall looks at the business card Slavy gave him and decides it's time to act. He tracks down Slavy and his goons above a restaurant where they're having a... McCall shows up with an envelope holding $9,800, offering to buy Elena's freedom. The thugs laugh at him, and Slavy says that amount of money would only keep Elena for a month. McCall, calm as ever, takes the cash back and starts to walk away. But right before leaving, he stops, locks the door, and checks out what weapons the guys have. He sets the timer on his watch and gets to work. One guy pulls a gun on McCall, but he quickly grabs the guy's arm and makes him accidentally shoot Slavy. McCall then slams a shot glass into the guy's eye and goes to town on Tavy with a corkscrew, jabbing him over and over until he finishes him off by stabbing it under his chin. He then walks over to Slavy and watches him slowly die. After the massacre, a Russian mob enforcer named Teddy arrives in Boston to figure out who killed Slavy and the others. Teddy's no slouch. He teams up with a group of dirty cops to track down the killer. Meanwhile, at work, McCall hears that Ralphie hasn't been showing up. Apparently, Ralphie quit and is now helping out at his mom's restaurant after a fire broke out, supposedly by accident. Teddy's hunt leads him to a gangster named John Looney, with the help of a corrupt cop named Frank Masters. Things get heated when John insults Teddy and the Russian mob. Teddy, not one to take insults lightly, smashes an ashtray over John's head while Frank takes out John's goons. Teddy continues beating John unconscious, proving he's not one to mess with. Back at Homemart, McCall plays a game of baseball with his co-workers, and Ralphie shows up in a security guard uniform, having passed his test. Good for him, but trouble's brewing when two other dirty cops, Reamer and Peterson, show up at Ralphie's mom's restaurant and start extorting her for money. They threaten to cause another accident if she doesn't pay up. McCall catches the dirty cops outside the restaurant and says he wants to report a crime. They shrug him off until he calls one of them directly. Then McCall pulls out his phone, showing a video of them extorting a store clerk and admitting they started the fire at the restaurant. McCall gives them a choice: return the money or the video hits the news. The cops try to pull their guns, but McCall quickly disarms them and gives them a beating.
When it had the fire, same thing could happen to you.
The next day, The dirty cops return the money to Ralphie's mom. A robber strolls in a Home Mart one day and holds up the cashier, Jenny, pointing a gun at her. He demands she hand over all the money in the register, and she's obviously terrified. McCall, calm as ever, steps in and gives the guy the cash. But the robber isn't done yet. He wants Jenny's ring too, which was her mother's. With tears in her eyes, Jenny hands it over. McCall takes a good look at the crook, noting his tattoos and the cap he's wearing, but doesn't act because there are kids around with their mom. Instead, McCall follows him outside and memorizes the license plate on his car. Later, the cops tell McCall that this guy's been pulling off a bunch of robberies just like this. McCall isn't about to let this go. The next day, he heads to the tool aisle, picks up a sledgehammer, and does what needs to be done. By the time Jenny comes back to work, she finds her ring sitting in the register. McCall quietly puts the sledgehammer back, wiping it down first. Meanwhile, Teddy, the Russian mob enforcer, is digging into McCall's life, trying to find something that links him to Slobby's murder. But McCall's record is squeaky clean, with no hint of trouble. Teddy teams up with Frank and another bad guy, staking out a spot while they send one of their goons into the diner to McCall. McCall's already onto him, though. The guy starts walking toward McCall, gun out, but right then, a truck pulls up and blocks Teddy's view from outside. McCall quickly hits the guy in the stomach with his book, then slams his head into the table, breaking his neck. With the lights off, McCall sticks a knife in an outlet, cutting the power, and strolls out of the diner, snapping pictures of Teddy and his crew in their car as he leaves. The mobsters track McCall to his apartment. While Teddy and his men storm the place, McCall has already slipped out, watching everything on hidden cameras. Teddy knows McCall is watching, but McCall's always a step ahead. He heads to the house of his old friends, Brian and Susan Plummer. Susan, who has some serious connections, digs up info on Teddy and the people he's working. Brian, meanwhile, talks to McCall, saying everyone thought he was dead for a while. Susan knew better. When Susan gets back with the info, she reveals that the men McCall killed were part of the Russian mafia, run by a guy named Vladimir Pushkin. Teddy's real name is Nikolai, and he's Pushkin's go-to guy when dirty work needs to be done. She also tells McCall that those dirty cops, Reamer and Peterson, were on Pushkin's payroll, but recently turned up dead with their testicles blown off and shoved down their throats. Susan warns McCall that these guys won't stop until they've killed him and anyone close to him. McCall tracks down Frank, trapping him in his car with a hose pumping in carbon monoxide. Frank, desperate to live, gives in and agrees to help McCall. He leads McCall to a warehouse where the Russians stash their money. McCall manages to get the gangsters inside to surrender, ties them up with all the cash, and leaves them for the cops to find. When the police arrive, they arrest Frank and find all the cash, plus the gangsters. McCall then sneaks into Frank's safety deposit box, where he finds money, a passport, and a USB with info on Pushkin's operations. With this intel, McCall locates Pushkin's oil tankers and blows them up, taking a big chunk out of the mob's business. Back at Home Mart, Teddy and his crew take McCall's friends hostage, including Ralphie and Jenny. They're using them as bait, hoping to lure McCall in. They track his cell phone, but when McCall doesn't show up as planned, things start to get tense. The mobsters are about to execute one of McCall's co-workers when, out of nowhere, music starts playing over the store's intercom. The thugs spread out, trying to figure out what's going on, but one by one, McCall starts taking them down. McCall's methodical and quiet. He hangs one of the guys with barbed wire, Ralphie, trying to help, ends up getting shot in the leg, but McCall helps him escape. After that, it's just McCall and Teddy. The fire sprinklers go off, and McCall grabs a nail gun, firing nails at Teddy until he hits him right in the throat, finally taking him out. 3 days later, McCall tracks Pushkin down in Moscow. The guy is in the shower, totally unaware. McCall starts messing with the lights, turning them on and off, and running the sink water. Pushkin, confused, goes to check the sink, only to find McCall has vanished. He calls for his guards, but McCall already cut the wires, leaving them exposed. By the time anyone realizes what happened, all the guards are dead and McCall is gone. Back in Boston, McCall runs into Elena again. She's healed up, got a new job, and even started reading. She thanks him for everything and gives him a kiss on the cheek before they part ways. The movie wraps up with McCall back at his usual diner, this time on his laptop. He gets a message from someone asking for help, and he simply replies, "Yes."